Hey besties, before we get into this podcast, I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer that the audio in this podcast isn't the best. I tried out a new studio and the audio settings were all messed up, but I did my best to fix them post-production. It's not the worst thing in the world, but if you guys hear buzzing or weird audio noises in the background, please disregard. This episode is super important. I have a special guest on, Kenzie. She's a TikToker. We talk about relationships, standards, KGH. But yeah, I'm sorry about the weird audio. It'll be better in the future. Without further ado, let's just get straight into it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Improvement for Imbeciles podcast. I'm your podcast host, Natalie, Etched, and this is where I share ways in which I'm getting my shit together so that you can get your shit together. Except this week, it's not just me. I'm joined with a very special guest, Kenzie. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
In this podcast, we're going to be sharing some big sister advice on relationships, or more like you're going to be giving me some big sister advice.
Okay, I got you.
Most of you tuning in know Kenzie from her TikTok, and we want the tea on KGH, girl.
Oh my goodness.
We want the tea on KGH.
Who doesn't want the tea on KGH?
And also, like, where'd you find him? Amazon? You got them on Amazon?
You know what? He has a brother.
Send me that Instagram.
I got you. But I met him at a coffee shop, and literally we just were vibing. Like, I was waiting in line, and then that's how I met him. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting his Instagram, and when I look at his Instagram, I'm like, hold on. It was like a simple, like, first, last name. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, why do I know this name? Why do I know this name from somewhere? And we clicked like so fast. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then later on I find out, oh, this guy was my kindergarten husband. So for those of you who don't know, kindergarten husband, aka KGH, when I was in kindergarten, 4 years old, I married, the fake Mary. I married this guy in kindergarten, and it was really fun. It was a really big deal. Everyone attended the wedding, and, it was just fabulous. And then I ended up moving. Yeah. And
that's where your love story ended. Or
it
so
ended.
You thought.
Yeah, I thought. I never thought I was going to see him again. I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. And then I forgot about this man. I mean, He forgot about me. He didn't even know who I was. Mm-hmm. I should break up with him. No, I'm kidding.
No. Imagine after this, you're just like,
you know what? I'm mad that you didn't know who I was.
You really didn't reach out to me in 4th grade. Like, you were with that one girl. Yeah.
You're done.
You're done. You know what's so funny? After I saw your video, I was like, I wonder where my kindergarten husband is. Because I remember doing the whole ceremony. Yes. I remember his name is Hunter. And I'm not going to say his last name, but I looked him up. Tell me why he's gay. I'm like, oh my God, what if I had like a KGH moment and I like reached out, after all these years? He is gay. I saw him in the Pride Parade. I was like, damn.
Oh, so he's really just straight rainbow.
Yeah, I mean, I love it.
Because the girls.
But I'm like, damn, like, I'm going to have to find like my 1st grade husband. You know what I mean? Because I was a player.
So you had another one. I only had one.
I had 3 on the roster. Yes.
Absolutely. As you should, honestly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, ladies.
So without giving too much away, how early on did you know you wanted to date KGH? And how did you, I guess, lead him into asking you to be his girlfriend?
You know what? I'm happy you asked that because I've been wanting to talk about that for a goddamn minute.
Yeah, how come you didn't jump into a relationship? How did you get yourself to a point where he was doing all these things for you? Like, girl, he took you on a damn plane ride. Like, he did that 3-tier date thing. I'm like...
It was so fun.
Again, where'd you get that? Amazon?
Kindergarten.
Essentially, how did you not be so flattered? Because I know if that were me, I'd probably fold.
So, honestly, a lot of people in my comment section, especially, they kept on asking me, like, girl, he's doing X, Y, and Z for you. Why are you not pursuing that? Why are you not? And, I appreciate the effort. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that he didn't do something amazing, because he did. Like, that's more than most men are doing for women. But I also think that we should realize that when you first meet someone, you're not really meeting the true, authentic self. You're meeting their representative. You're meeting the person who's trying to impress you. And so I wanted to push past that. I wanted to be kindergarten husband's friend before anything else. And that's how I go into dating anybody. I would rather become your friend and know that I like you as a person, opposed to just liking you because I think you're attractive or you're doing all these amazing things for me. Because there's some people who put on a facade, and they're really not how they actually are in a relationship, if that makes sense. For example, men can wine and dine you, and they might think, oh, this girl, she looks really expensive. She looks like she likes the finer things in life. Let me spend all this money on her. Let me only take her to the nicest things. When in reality, that man is just a simple man. He doesn't really live life like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's putting on the front, and then he's going to take it all back and be
exactly.
like, you're extra, when,
Exactly.
you know, you thought you were getting something else. It's like men catfish their entire personality sometimes just to get in a woman's pants. And to bounce off of that, I really want to get into your standards, because I know a lot of younger girls who watch you are very, very doubtful of themselves and don't know how to get themselves to a point where they have higher standards. A lot of times when we talk about standards, a lot of women will fold for things like extravagant things, you know,
Yeah.
not getting to know someone for who they are, kind of just the surface level of what they show you at first. And it'll be great at first, you know. I know if 18-year-old me was like taking on a private jet, I'd be like, girl, yeah. Like,
I'd be like, wow, I'm going to say, even if he treats me like shit.
yeah.
And there's so many women like that. I said something in one of my videos that a lot of women resonated with. And I said, just because a man has money doesn't make him a quality man. So you need to look for something more than money. Don't get me wrong. I believe that a man should provide for a woman. And that's something that I personally am always going to believe. However, there should be more to it. You can't just only be bringing me money, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You can't just only be giving me nice things. And that's where you as a woman need to have discernment.
And so talking about your standards, what really made you have the standards you have for yourself? I know a lot of women don't know how to get their standards higher than they are. What would that be for you? What thing really did it in your life?
Well, in my life, unfortunately, it came from a toxic relationship. However, you don't have to go through a toxic relationship to know what you want and what you need out of a relationship, because once you go through something like that, your needs always change. You know, I'm not the same person I was before I was in that relationship. I'm a whole nother different person. And so now my needs and my wants are so much different. And I think if you can go without that toxicity, it would be amazing. I would tell my younger viewers, learn yourself, get to know yourself. What are your passions? What are your likes? What is something that gives you life? And bring someone that doesn't make you happy, but adds to your happiness.
Yeah.
And I don't know, base your standards off of that.
I agree. And I also think for a lot of the younger viewers out there, I agree. I was also in like a toxic relationship. Not that that person was like a bad person. I think you were saying that earlier too, you know, not like that person was a bad person, just the relationship, you know, you don't mesh well with someone sometimes. And take what you can learn from a situation always. Like, I always view things or situations in life as either a blessing or a lesson. And I think that's super important for the younger viewers out there. Like, if you're going through a hard situation, sometimes it's to help you learn your standards more and to help you build yourself up. So I'm really proud of you for that, you know, and that's probably why you're having this good relationship come into your life now. Yeah, I knew you were excited.
Yes,
you were absolutely excited. Like, you always talk
Who
about
wouldn't be?
Who wouldn't be, girl?
Yeah.
If a man was doing that for me, again, I would probably not uphold my standards, which is why I'm single right now. Which is why I know, okay, girl, I need to stand on business, because
You know what? And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, honestly, I think people give singleness such like a bad rep, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I want love, or I want this, I want a partner, I don't want to feel lonely." But really, I think it gives you a chance to date yourself.
Real,
I
yeah.
watched your video today. The Valentine's one, the poetic one.
Oh.
It was so beautiful. I really
Thank you
liked
so
how you
much.
talked, and I liked your perspective on it. And I feel like a lot of girls will be able to relate to that.
Yeah, I think especially growing up in the age where a lot of women are kind of waking up to the fact that some of the ways we go about love can be a little bit like pick me, if you will.
Yeah.
I think for a while I didn't even recognize that I had some pick me qualities, but it was more so I put myself in situations where I knew I wasn't being loved correctly because I just wanted to like change someone's mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to like recognize
And
you're not loving someone for like what they're showing you. You're just loving the idea of them changing.
exactly. And you know what? Another thing is like rejection. too. That's a really hard pill to swallow for people. And I've been rejected a couple times. I feel like it's just inevitable. We all go through that, but that doesn't mean it's not hard. It's a hard thing
Mhm.
to go through and experience. And you
Yeah.
shouldn't just get into a relationship because you don't want to be alone. Accept people how they are, but place them where they belong. And if they belong with you, they will be. If they don't, then they won't.
Yes. I think it also shows up in a lot of women who are extremely, extremely pretty or have some amazing quality about themselves, us go-getters.
Yes.
Sometimes we'll have a lot of options, but then when we have one thing that we don't want, we're almost more attracted to that thing.
Yeah.
We're like, what's wrong with me? Like, why
Exactly.
is it that everyone else is like in my DMs and whatever, but then this one person just doesn't care?
Yeah, and it's
And
almost like you're trying to prove yourself to that person when you don't need to
yes.
prove yourself to anybody. You
Mhm.
really don't.
I heard this thing about like proving energy. I think a lot of women will approach dating as if they have to prove themselves when it should be the other way around. A man is supposed to prove himself to you that he is safe. Like
Right.
you even going on a date with this man can possibly cause you to be in a harmful situation.
Exactly.
So when you redefine what it means to be in your life, you can realize like my presence is a gift, but it can also be I remember we were talking about this off the podcast. You're not hard to get, you're hard to get rid of.
Oh, yes.
Like
I
you
saw a
don't want
video
to,
on that.
yeah, you don't want to be hard to get rid of. Like your presence needs to be the prize. Like when someone is in your
Exactly.
presence, how will they learn to value your presence when you are constantly giving energy to things that are trying to throw you away?
I heard this analogy one time. I was in a relationship, my toxic relationship, where I felt like I was giving more than I was receiving, and that hurts. It hurts to give so much love, and then you almost feel robbed because that
Mm,
person isn't, giving you what you want or what you need.
yeah.
And the analogy that I was given was you are a gallon of water and you're pouring into a cup. And then once that cup is full, you're still going and it's overflowing. It's crazy.
Hmm.
And even if that person is giving you their all, they pour into you. They're still pouring into you. But you're a gallon, so it's only going to fill you up like barely anything. And you're trying to get more out of that person, but they gave you everything they had. Something that I wish I would have realized sooner. You may think you aren't doing enough. You're not giving me enough, but they are. They are giving you everything that they have. They just they're a cup and you're a gallon. It feels like that because you just don't mesh together. You don't it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
you being a gallon person, you have to realize like, can you accept someone that's a cup or do you need someone that's a gallon?
I know this is a silly analogy and you're probably going to be like, girl, what the hell? But like, let's say you are milk and then the person you're trying to give to is lactose intolerant. So everything you give them, they just shit it out. You know what I mean?
Like, I
And then
wasn't
you feel
expecting
like,
that, but it's
no, I don't know why that came to my mind. I was like, gallon, milk. Anyway,
yeah.
sometimes I have these dumb analogies and it's like, but that makes sense though.
But and also that's something that
Hmm.
clicks in your head. It
Mhm.
works.
It literally works. Like, why would you give your milk to a lactose intolerant person and then get mad at them for like what they do with it? Like sometimes people can't value what you are
Hmm.
because they need something else and again, you just don't mesh well with that person. So, to
Exactly.
get back to standards, I really really want you to just share with me like some of your top standards and maybe how you came to those realizations.
Do I want to say all my standards? I don't know if I'm comfortable saying all my standards because I kind of go by this thing where, like, if you're on a first date with someone, you don't tell the man what you're looking for in a man because then he's going to become that man that you're looking for.
Mhm.
But what I can tell you is there are something, I'll just say the communication thing, for example, because that is one of them. I can't be with someone who's going to yell at me, who's going to belittle me, and just make me feel bad for expressing myself and telling you how you're making me feel or how a situation is making me feel. And I got that, like I said, because of the toxic relationships that I was in.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's this feeling sometimes of like walking on eggshells with a person because no way that you approach them. Like, even then, yes, I think approaching someone about your feelings in
mhm.
a cohesive way and making sure that you're open to a conversation is important. But, like, how can you force someone to listen to you who will constantly think you're saying something different, constantly misinterpreting what you're trying to say?
I don't think you can force that person. I say this all the time, and I think I said this earlier in the podcast. Accept people how they are, but place them where they belong. And that's if you realize like I'm someone who I don't do too much anymore. I used to be the girl that would call up my man's phone so many times. Why aren't you answering that? Where are you? Oh, I'm looking through his phone. I'm looking for problems and I'm gonna get hurt. Right? I used to do the most. And now I don't. I just accept people for how they are. If I'm coming to you for my with my problems and I don't feel it being respected, I just make a mental note in my head. I don't comment on it to the person, but I'll make a mental note in my head. I'll be like, "Okay, little tick. That's off."
Mhm.
I'll be like, "This person's not going to work for me. I'm done entertaining." You know? So, I think it's very important, like how I said earlier, to be genuine and be authentic. If you are a person who does too much, then do too much. I think a lot of relationships don't work out because we are trying to be this person to impress the other person. You know, they'll be this loving guy and then later on in the relationship you're like, "Oh my god, he changed." No, he's just showing you the true him. And
Mm.
if those people showed up as their true selves in the beginning, I feel like a lot of relationships would be either saved or they wouldn't have happened. And it would
Yeah.
save you a lot of time
I
and energy.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree. Like one of my most viewed videos is a crush is a lack of information, and I still stand on that. Like, there's a lot of like conflicting things in the comments of like, well, this is obvious, but people act like it's not obvious. Like, you'll
No.
do all of these things, and you'll speed run a relationship, acting like it's going somewhere because you would assume that this person is the way that they first present themselves when they're
Right.
not.
Mhm.
You get to know someone with time. You can't accept who this person is when they first show you it because it's a thing that all humans do. It's
Mhm.
not a malicious thing. People aren't like trying to be something different or whatever. Literally a part of our human nature
Yeah.
that we want to present ourselves the best way possible when we first meet someone.
Yeah. We
Like,
kinda we like have different faces. I mean, you're gonna act different at work than you are gonna be with your friends at home, you know?
yeah,
Or with your family. Like,
yeah,
you aren't gonna act the same in a lot of situations, but
yeah. And
just
some, yeah,
knowing that, and that's why we take our time with
yes,
or you're supposed to take your time in the dating pool when you're dating around. Take your time. You don't just date the person who's just whining and dining you. You don't
yeah,
date the first person who's treating you right. You wanna get to know them, and that's something that's very important, and just like I said, knowing that people aren't going to be their true selves around you until they're very comfortable shows that you should just wait. You should just wait because you'll be able to navigate through that relationship and see if that person is right for you.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. So don't entertain the bullshit, right? That's
Right.
the
Don't
big that
entertain
don't
bullshit.
entertain bullshit. And so a big standard is make sure that if you're approaching someone and dating someone, you just allow them to be their authentic selves as they come because everyone has a different relationship with their authentic self. Some people,
Mhm.
they're never true to themselves, so they can't be true to others.
Right.
Other people, they're literally like you meet them and maybe they'll change slightly or they'll become a little bit sillier. It's like you'll see the unhinged version, but
Right.
it's pretty much like, oh, you see what you get. Like I met this person and that's the same exact energy. It's just now I know them a lot better because they
Right.
opened up to me.
Mhm.
Some people have a different relationship with their authentic selves, so allow the people to reveal themselves to you over
Yeah,
time. And once they
exactly.
reveal themselves, be like, oh my God, I didn't know this is who you are. Like,
Yeah, and that
ew.
could be either
Like,
a good thing or a bad thing, it depends. Because
yeah.
sometimes, you know, you can meet someone and get really comfortable with them and you realize, like, wow, you're really great. Like, I mean, that's happened to me a couple times, not even only with KGH, with other people, even not just relationship wise, but as friends. I'll meet someone and I might not even really like them at first. And then I give them a chance because I always like to give people chances sometimes. Not people of interest that I'm trying to date, but more on a friendship level, and, you know, I get to know them as a person, I'm like, "Wow, you're pretty great. Like, I thought you were a bitch at first," you know?
Yeah, and sometimes people are just having a bad day. Like
Yeah.
nothing's ever personal, and when sometimes it is, but
Mhm.
most of the time when you first meet someone, I think it's so important to have like this lighthearted attitude because
Yeah,
when if you interpret everything as a personal attack, you'll just run around the world getting hurt all of the damn time.
right.
Another thing that really resonates with me, that's a standard of mine, is putting yourself in situations where love can bloom. So I think you and I were like deep lovers, right?
Yes.
Like I'm a hopeless romantic, so much, and that's why I have these standards for myself
Yeah.
because I know that I need to put myself in situations where I'm actually going to be able to, see this person clearly or have my boundaries respected. So kind of creating distance, like don't be scared of distance when it comes to relationships.
Right.
And that's something I'm becoming a lot more comfortable with because I would constantly seek who I was in other people in some ways,
Yeah.
right? I'd like be so infatuated with someone and then I'd see the true version of them and then I'd be like, well, like I can change them. No, babe.
No,
It's
that's
never
them.
gonna work. That's them. That's who they are. So putting yourself in situations where love can bloom, like have a list of things of your non-negotiables or things that you want in a person. Even
Mhm.
if it's Delulu. Even if it's Delulu. Like, yeah, some
Yeah.
of the things you can be like, maybe he doesn't need to be the tallest or the handsomest or whatever, but if you have those like non-negotiables checked,
Right.
then it doesn't necessarily
And if I'm
matter.
gonna be honest, the looks and the heights and all of that should not be one of your standards. I mean, if they are, then more power to you. But for me, at least what works for me, I need to know that we mesh well, your personality and your caring and a bunch of other things.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Can I ask you something?
yeah,
How delulu were you about KGH on a scale of like 1 to 10?
13. I was extremely delusional. But okay, so before I even met KJH, which is funny, you can go back on my TikToks. I was doing a get ready with me to go on a date. And then I was like, actually, besties, I'm not really going on a date because I don't have a date, but we're manifesting. And I feel like being delusional is so important because I've been delusional ever since I was 5 years old. Like I've been so delusional my whole life.
Mhm.
And that's why I have gotten everything I've wanted out of life, but it always happens because I truly believe in my delusions.
People have a bad rep about like delusion. I think there is a way to be delusional in the right ways. There's
Right.
definitely a right and a wrong way to be delusional.
Definitely.
But having goals and having dreams, I feel like the world is just prone to shitting on you if you have dreams. Like
Mhm.
prone to being like, you can never achieve that. You can never get that man. You can never get whatever
And that's
XYZ.
why you have to block out the haters. You know that?
Blocking out the
No,
haters.
literally. No, but it's the truth. Like every time, like there's been so many times like when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a YouTuber. Okay? That was one of my main things, and I also wanted to be a singer. I was like, I want to be a singer when
Oh
I
my
was
god,
little.
tell me why I wanted to be both of those too. Girl, when I was like I
We're
was so
twins.
delulu when I was like 7. I remember my grandpa had this like camera and I started to record myself like feeding the chickens on his camera because I remember we had chickens at the time and I'd be like, this is me feeding the chickens. And then I'd like feed the chickens and be like, like I
Girl,
was like
that's
manifesting me
me. No,
vlogging,
that's
dude.
literally me.
No.
Me too. Like I would literally take my camera everywhere, my little iPhone. I don't remember. It was the old one. And I would be like, I would ask my little brother, I'm like, walk with me, hurry, catch up. And then we would be doing like the ramen challenge, the slime challenges.
Slime
Oh
challenges,
my,
dude.
yes.
I was so delulu when I was younger about
Mhm.
like I just knew I was gonna be a YouTuber at some point. And then
Mhm.
my first YouTube channel, I did that just based on being delusional. Like my dad said, "You're not allowed on the internet," and I actually snuck my first YouTube channel. So that
Jokes
was
on you,
that.
Dad.
Jokes on you, dad. And then like that was my first ever YouTube check. So being
Period.
delulu is
Slay. Yeah.
literally it allows you to get into this dreamy mode, and when you shut out the world and just go for what you know is best,
Mhm.
that's when I've noticed I've felt my truest self. Like
Right.
I have felt my truest self when I've just shut out
Everything, every person, every negative thing. Honestly, I can say I felt that too because there was a lot of times in my life where I have been doubted and a lot of people has shit on me. And finally you
you
get
get shit
shitted
on.
on. No, okay. I'm sorry.
Real.
Oh no, but
No,
my
no, but
ADHD, I'm
this
sorry.
is real. No, me
No.
too.
People have doubted me. People have doubted me in the past and they'll be like, "Girl, why are you doing that? That's so embarrassing." Like I would make TikTok videos and all this stuff. I remember my very first like TikTok. I would do the little TikTok dances and stuff. This is when TikTok wasn't cool. People were like, "Bitch, you're on TikTok." And I'm just like, "Yeah." It was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. And I was in public doing this and I was just like, that's me. That's me and I'm going to be authentically myself. I don't care. And eventually I started getting popular on there and I got like 2.6 million. This was my other account before I got banned. T. I gained popularity and views and everything. And then now people want to come around. Oh my God, I always believed in you. Oh my God, I knew you were always going to do this. And I'm just looking at them like, yeah, fucking right. You literally were preying on my downfall and you would tell me like, this is embarrassing and make me feel
Yes.
bad for being myself. So I think like one of the key things about manifesting and everything is be delusional and don't listen to the negativity. Don't. I mean, obviously, like you were saying, there's a fine line. Like yes, I'm saying be delusional, but like don't be overly like insane where you're thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna wake up with $1 million in my pocket tomorrow. Like be realistic and work towards that manifestation because it will
Yes,
happen.
I
And for
agree.
me personally, I pray a lot. I give all the glory to God because I feel like He's the reason why I am who I am and why I'm here. And even all the bad situations, I thank Him because I've grown from all those situations and I'm so blessed. Sometimes what we want isn't always the best thing or isn't always the right path to go on. So I always pray for discernment. I pray that God always leads me on the right path, or even if I'm going down the wrong way, because everything always works out.
Yeah, having
Everything
that.
always works out.
I agree. Being delusional is a very, very essential part to manifesting, but also not being delusional and having your goals be grounded in reality through like
Right.
inspired action.
Exactly.
Obviously, I think that a lot of people who talk about manifestation online, they prioritize, oh, you need to do the 369 method. You need to write all this down. What writing down things does help, but it's not in the entirety of the work. The real work comes from like identifying blocks, because sometimes it's like the self-doubt within me that's been like, I need to figure this out, and that's why my manifestation was not coming yet. And again, trusting that everything happens in divine timing almost. Like you're not
Yes.
going to get an opportunity or have something come to you when it's not actually meant for you or when you're not ready for it. Being delusional will feel like everything is falling into place, like in the right
Yes.
ways. If you are being delusional in the right ways, it'll just feel like you're walking up this staircase and everything just falls into place and you don't know what your next step is, but the floor will like raise to
But
your
everything's
foot.
elevating.
Everything is elevating. You're going on the right path.
Right.
And then there is times where you're being delusional in the wrong ways. For example, my own toxic relationship, I was being delusional about this person changing, right? I was
Yeah.
putting all my trust in this person and nothing was working.
Mhm.
It just felt like everything was falling apart. There kept being things in my life that would happen that would separate me and this person.
Right.
And sometimes that thing is just not meant for you, whether that's a relationship or a manifestation you want. Everything happens for a reason.
And you know what, to follow on what you're saying, I was really delusional one time, especially in my toxic relationship. And that's why I now say God's will be done, because I don't believe that I need to follow my own path. I'm going to follow His because He's right. I was so delusional. I would manifest these certain things, like very specific manifestations, which would come true. Believe it or not, they would come true. But it was at a cost. It would always have like a negative connotation attached to it. It wasn't always so positive. For example, me and him got in this big ass argument. It was terrible. And I just remember bawling my eyes out. And then finally, like, I'm over here acting like a pick-me girl. Back to my pick-me days. Like, I was, like, basically begging him for me to go to his house to go see him. Like, what kind of sense does that make? I don't know. I can't remember what exactly happened, but something bad had happened. And then he felt bad for me. So he was like, come over. Like, and I'm like, okay, I got what I wanted. But did I really get what I wanted? Did I really want that? No, I didn't. If anything, that was God trying to say, like, bitch, stay your ass home.
When you're being delusional in the wrong way, random things will happen that'll just be like, you shouldn't go this way. Do not go this way. And you'll misinterpret all of those signs saying, no, this is not meant for you, as the universe being like, this thing is meant for you. You just need to try harder. Try less.
It's giving, I can't see, I'm blind.
No, like seriously, like girl, try less, do less, because sometimes when you're in those situations and you're like, is this really meant for me? If you have to ask, like, is this person meant for you? It's not.
Right.
And so when you finally got out of your toxic relationship, what were some of the things that you kind of had to get over within yourself? Like things that you recognized that you were like, oh, I don't need to take this on to my next relationship.
Honestly, I think I'm perfect. So nothing. No, can you imagine?
I'm just like, you're like,
girl, that's a toxic trait in itself. And Actually, to go off of that, I did think I was very perfect. That thought of me just thinking there's no issues and I'm okay, that was one of those things that I had to get over. This was a couple years ago when I had a reality check because I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm going through X, Y, and Z, and I don't really communicate efficiently. I used to be a person who was very passive aggressive. Not really necessarily sweep things under the rug, but let's say someone does something to me, I'd be like, I'll be getting my lick back soon. Like, I just always think of the revenge in the back of my head, and which is a really bad trait.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
There's been times, like, I was actually talking to my TikTok about this, where before me and KGH were together, he invited me to go to this Secret Santa thing with his friends. Keep in mind, this is the first time I'm meeting his friends. And I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope they like me. There was this girl who was like giving him a hug. And I'm not one of those jealous people. I mean, we all are going to be jealous at some point in our life. It's just how you manage that jealousy is what matters. He had given her one of those like rocking hugs. And I looked at him and I said, the Latina in me wanted to come out. And I said, oh, he wants me to slap him. What the fuck? And we're not together. But in my head, I'm just thinking like violent things. It's bad. It's bad. And I'm like, why am I like this? But I didn't act on it. This is just what my thoughts were. And so I was just like, I'm not going to say anything. So I didn't. However, I was petty that night, and I didn't tell this to my TikTok. Later that night, we had went bowling. So we're bowling, and there was one of his friends there. He happened to be like, 6'7"? You know, definitely someone intimidating for a guy. I started, not flirting, but kind of flirting, if that makes sense. But I was also single at the time.
Girl.
I was single at the time, because like even though I'm like, yeah, I came here with you, that doesn't mean I'm leaving with you. But that sounds so horrible. But I was very petty. I'm very inside. I can be a very petty person when I feel disrespected. I'm like, I always think of the revenge, and that's a toxic trait of mine that I'm actually still trying to work through. And I feel like healing in general is not linear. Like people think it's not like I'm going to recognize, oh, that's a toxic trait, so I'm going to stop it. No, you have to catch yourself. And I realized I was doing that. So later when we got back to his house, I had a conversation with him, and then we talked it out. And then he told me like what I was doing like affected him and bothered him. And it was like open, and it was a beautiful conversation. And we got to really just understand each other. And I feel like being able to acknowledge your toxic traits or acknowledge your mindsets and why you think a certain way and know, okay, maybe this isn't right.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think, do you think you might have done that mainly because you've maybe been hurt in the past or been tricked around by guys in the past? So it's like... Definitely.
Like you were saying, especially being a pretty girl, not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but like
Girl,
you're pretty, I'm pretty, we're all pretty.
We're all pretty.
And
yes.
I feel like beautiful women experience a different side of men because men will lust us and not exactly really want to be with us, if that makes sense. I'm not saying men don't want to be with us, but I'm saying they don't look past the beauty. And so I've seen different parts of men, lustful parts of men where I don't really like, and I feel like that's why I'm so...
Well, I also think that there's an aspect too where if you have a higher standard that you set for guys who aren't willing to step up to the plate will just end up going for girls who have lower standards. And that's just a thing of anything, like that. It doesn't have to do with beauty at all, but I think there is a validity there where you'll feel, again, you're extremely gorgeous, but a lot of guys will be intimidated by that because not only are you gorgeous, but you have things going for yourself. You have direction. You're smart. Like, you're the whole package deal. So when you're the whole package deal, it can be difficult to find a guy who is also the whole package deal and not willing to just entertain someone who doesn't necessarily have those things going for themselves. Because, again, it's the low-hanging fruit. Nobody's going to want to climb all the way up to the top of the tree to get you because you're all the way up here.
When they can have all these other little branches.
Yeah. So there is this, like, when you start to like someone and you see something like that, you can get a little jealous because there is a part of you that doesn't want to be hurt.
Right.
You know?
And another thing is like I've been in a situation because being a pretty girl where a guy will be unloyal to maybe his current girlfriend and try to make a pass at me. And I'm like, whoa, like I don't believe in cheating. I'm you know, it's not for me because I've been cheated on, so I'm just like, fuck.
That makes two of us, girl.
Like, I feel like everybody at this point.
Yeah,
but,
honestly.
Men they think with their area. They don't think with their brain.
Yeah.
They think with the other brain. They think with the other head. And so it's just kind of annoying. But I feel like a lot of pretty girls in specific, they deal with that because they've had to see that.
I agree. So maybe this jealousy, I really want to go a little bit inward on maybe the things that have come up with you and KGH, because would you say that the relationship came out of the blue for you? You know, you were manifesting it, but in reality, it's kind of like the universe or God kind of smacked you up on the head with like the exact thing you wanted. And you didn't necessarily know what to do with yourself because you still had these toxic traits and coping mechanisms from being with someone who didn't treat you the way you want.
Aside from that, I think it actually stems deeper than a relationship for me. It actually stems from my friendships because I noticed this as a child. I'm very territorial, so I'm one of those people like I'm just like, oh, you're mine, or if this is mine, this is mine.
But that's also kind of cute.
But like, it can also not be cute.
It can also not be cute, but like low key, that's one of my toxic traits too, of like jealousy, because I don't know, sometimes I think a little bit of jealousy is cute. Like when you see someone getting a little jealous over you, it's like, oh my God.
No, it's nice. And like I said, it's like normal to feel jealous, but how you react off of that jealousy is important. Like I had to realize this at a very young age because my jealousy stemmed from my friendships. I had a friendship where we were triplets. Like it was all three of us. We were all besties, right? But there's always going to be two that are closer than the one. And most of them. I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody because everyone has their own experience. But I used to feel very like jealous, like they would hang out without me. And I'd be like, what the fuck? Why? Yeah. Why didn't you guys invite me? Like, I was free too. And then, like, I would see, like, they're going out doing things. And I'd be like, what the fuck? And so then I started to become very independent because I didn't want to feel that jealousy. And then I started looking inwards and I'm like, why do I feel this way? Why am I so jealous? Because other people are allowed to have friends, even outside of you. Like, I should not be feeling this way. Why am I so angry right now at these people? That's when I started pouring into myself. Just being in your own presence and realizing what makes you happy and stop worrying so much on other people. When you focus too much on the wrong things, when you're focusing too much on someone else, you're taking away that energy from yourself. So you're not going to feel happy. My ex actually told me this in my toxic relationship. However, everything he said was true, but it was a hard pill to swallow. He had told me, you are so sad and miserable and worried about this relationship because you are too focused on me and you're not focused enough on yourself. I was like, what the fuck? And he was like, yeah, you don't have anything going on for you, which was halfway true, but it was true. There was truth in it, which is why it hurt. Sometimes the truth hurts. And I was telling some of my people on TikTok, like, one thing about my ex, even though it was very toxic, that man was very honest with me, even when I didn't want him to be. And that's something that I'm very blessed and grateful for because I was able to grow from that and change things about myself and change those toxic habits that I had.
I completely agree. And I just want to like really take a second to validate what you said and how important those realizations are to have for you. Because you've come a long way, obviously. And also, although you're giving all of this like credit to like your ex saying those things, I think there is an aspect of yourself that just wanted to be loved. Like an aspect of your inner child where you were extending yourself. Like for me, at least, when I've given a lot of my energy to people, that's when I've started to become passive aggressive because I felt like the more I put into you, you should be pouring into me that too. And again, sometimes you're this gallon and you pour into people this gallon, but then like, again, they are this little cup and you can't get so mad at yourself for being more. Like you are deserving of more. Right. You can't make yourself less in order to feel loved. And I feel like you've obviously done that a lot where you've downplayed yourself. And I just want to validate that process for you because I really relate to you on that. Like, I've definitely felt like I had to be a certain person or, you know, downplay myself. And when you really like let that expectation go of yourself, you can start seeing people for who they are and not have these harsh expectations.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. So like having toxic traits come up when a relationship enters your life is so normal. And that doesn't mean you're still hooked on your ex or whatever. It just means that you need to open up yourself to love again. Because
Exactly.
when you've been fucked around with before, there's this aspect of like, I can't open up to people. You hugging that girl means that there's something else there. And yeah, I'm going to go flirt with this guy.
Exactly.
And so, and
It's
yes,
like,
that's
it comes,
toxic.
yeah, it comes from a place where you want that person to feel the same amount of hurt that you're feeling.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
That's not
It's
right.
not right. But it's valid. It's valid to feel that way, but it's not right.
And yeah, I think another big thing is like releasing yourself from having to be toxic in order to conform yourself in a toxic world. Recently, I've really had to battle that with myself because there's, again, a lot of toxic advice floating around. And I sometimes play into this toxic mindset. Absolutely. But then I find myself checking myself and I'm like, is that how I am? No. Do I keep myself in toxic situations because I want to prove myself that I'm worthy to be loved? Or do I remove myself from the situation as a whole because I recognize my own worth? And sometimes taking the latter is harder. Sometimes telling yourself, I'm not going to put up with this. I'd rather have peace is harder. Choosing peace for yourself is sometimes hard. So I just want to praise you for that because you're having a lot of important realizations right now. You meeting KGH was a really, really big turning point in opening yourself up to love. And I think you should have that. I also want to talk a little bit on the privacy of your guys' relationship because I know a lot of people are probably viewing this podcast in order to get the tea and everything. But you guys got to realize, like, this is her life.
Yeah.
This is her life.
And don't get me wrong, I definitely love sharing things. I love sharing things with all my supporters and the people who take the time out of their day to watch me. However, there are some things that I do want to keep private. Now, do I want my relationship secret? No, because I want people to know that I am off the market, like I am taken. But privacy is something that's so like
valid.
It's so valid and valuable because I feel like once you have all these outer things trying to come in and like make commentary on something that means so much to you, it can be hard. It can be hard to like decipher what's right and what's wrong sometimes because there's a lot of people who give really bad advice, which is why I don't really listen to a lot of people. However, that doesn't mean that it's not hard to like block out the haters, essentially. Block out the hate, block out the negativity. I want to show him off. It's not that I don't want to. It's just I don't want to have to deal with like I don't think I'm ready to share that part of my life yet because
you don't need a reason. You don't need a reason. You're just not ready, and that's okay.
Exactly, but I'm really not ready specifically because I used to do story times. Let me go off because it connects. I used to do story times where I talked a lot about my life and I said almost everything under the sun that would happen to me. People would be like, oh, this isn't real. This is real. Oh my God, that really happened. Yes, because I was sharing so much of my life, people are obviously going to have their own inputs and own opinions because that's just how humans are. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. It was nice and everything. And obviously, like, commentary is going to happen until I had shared a story about my friend passing one day. And it was recent. This was like when she had recently passed and I had talked about it. And that was something that I didn't fully heal from at the time. And so I wasn't ready and I didn't take into consideration all the feedback that people could possibly have on the positive and negative side. I didn't even consider a negative side because I'm like, my friend who was 19 passed away from cancer. And it was a very like rough, it was brutal. Like, how could someone even have anything negative to say about that? People did. Some people, not everybody. There was a lot of love and I try to only focus on the love. But that day made me realize you can't share everything with everyone. And so that's why I've taken what I learned from that experience and I've applied it to my relationship now. Because all the men that I've even posted that I've ever been with, people are always going to have something to say about it. And I don't want that because why are you talking about me in my life? Like, focus on yourself.
Yeah, focus on yourself, for real.
And it's just like, I get it. They're like, wow, this person is amazing and we want to see who this is, which I don't blame you guys, but it's like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready and I don't think he is either. And we've talked about it and I think in due time, we'll decide to post each other, but we're not ready yet.
Yeah,
so it's just
that's
simple.
absolutely
It's just simply
okay.
we're not ready.
And it's also important. I really want to hit on the privacy aspect. I think on social media too, we get to post things and we have this like endless stream of information, and we can see other people oversharing things. And I've done the same thing too. Like I've overshared things online and been like, girl, let's not do that.
Right.
But I think our generation is dealing with a completely different set of problems. And when you have an audience, yes, of course, you love being an influencer. You love posting your life. You love sharing things. But there is an aspect of you want to experience it for yourself. I know there's some
Yeah.
people who are viewing you talking about being a little bit toxic and being like, oh my God, girl, that's not good. It's like, worry about yourself, worry about your own life,
Mhm.
because everyone has things that come up for them. And that's up to you to decide if you want to share or not. And I think it's so important to validate that process for yourself. So if
Mhm.
you're watching this podcast on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever you're streaming, allow Kenzie to have her privacy. She will share things with you guys when she is ready. And she's also already sharing with you guys some tea. Like, let's be honest, y'all. Her life is a telenovela.
Literally.
Literally a telenovela. So let her.
It
let
never
her-
ends.
It
No.
never- it
No,
never ends,
actually,
yeah.
no, tell me why. Speaking of off topic, why did I get prank called yesterday? Why did I get, like, I am 24 years old. Why did I get prank calls? I'm like, who? And you know what? At first, I was just like, I'm not going to, because I don't answer numbers that aren't, like,
Me too.
saved.
Yeah.
They call me, and keep in mind, it's like 1 a.m. They call me, and they have the same area code as me. And I'm like, decline. They call me again. I'm like, decline. They call me a third time, and I was like, maybe it's like someone's dying. So I like answer the phone. The way my mind is just went very extreme. I don't know. My
No, I'm the
brain
same
thinks
way.
like that.
Like 3 calls.
I'm like, oh my God, it's God's calling. No, but I answer. I'm like, hello, and she's like, it's this woman. She's like, I'm at the Brick, and I'm like, what? What is that? Like, who are you? And she's like, is this not Kenzie? And I was like, this is Kenzie, but I don't know who you are. And she's like, I met you on Tinder. And I'm like, girl, I don't even have Tinder. I've never downloaded Tinder. And she's like, I'm 40. How old are you? And I'm like, 24. And she's like, oh, you're too young for me. But if you want to like have a good time at the Brick. And I'm like, decline. Or end
You're
the call.
I'm actually with KGH.
I'm just like, no, he was, funny story, he was actually FaceTiming me as I was getting this phone call. Like, on my MacBook, I had him, like, set up because we watched, like...
Do a 3-way call.
Yeah, imagine. No, because every night, I think it's so cute because he doesn't live in the same city as me. That's some tea for you guys. You guys didn't know that. But he doesn't live in the same city as me, so sometimes when we can't see each other, we'll FaceTime each other and we'll put on like this show. I don't know if you guys have ever watched Money Heist. It's so good. So
I haven't watched
it's
it.
so good. Well, it's in Spanish, but you can change it to like English. But I'm also like taking Spanish classes right now. So like I'm trying to like immerse myself. And I literally only listen to Spanish music right now. Like Kylie Uchis is my girl, but she was my girl before Spanish class. So like, anyways, I got off topic, but.
As you were saying, cute, like you do little movie nights with you and KGH, right?
Yeah.
that's
No.
very cute.
But I think that was off topic though. I think that was off topic.
Oh yeah, it was off topic, girl. I'm like thinking that's the topic. I'm
You're
like,
like
oh my
this.
God, what next? our ADHD brains, y'all. This is just like a girl yap session.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah, at this point. I know the answer to the question is probably no, but would you ever let KGH have like a girl best friend, or does he have a girl best friend?
No. I'm gonna ask that question with your question. I don't know if your parents are together or not, but for people who have their parents together, is your dad best friends with a girl that isn't his wife? Is he? I feel like most people are gonna say no. Like, I don't think I would feel comfortable with that, especially because of, oh my gosh, I keep on talking about it, but my past relationships. So that's probably one of my non-negotiables. If he has a girl best friend, you're done. Like, I can't do it.
I think it just depends on like what level friend it really is, because
I can't do it.
I feel like it depends.
I'm like, I don't
okay,
care.
girl. That's okay, girl. I think it just depends on like how deep the friend is. Like, you text his phone.
Guys, I'm no, you're done. I'm gonna fight her. No, no, but like, for example, y'all, Here's some tea. You guys want some tea? Here's some tea.
I want some tea.
My ex, but I was with him at the time. That was my boyfriend. My ex got a text from his best friend, who also happened to be a girl. She texted him this long ass paragraph telling him why she loved him and that he was amazing, and even put some hearts in there. And I was just like, I remember seeing that shit. And that was actually one of our first ever arguments. And I saw that shit and I was like, oh, hell no. And keep in mind, we were on like a 2-hour car ride and this happens. I get this incoming text and I happen to see it and I was like, what the fuck? And I literally grabbed his phone and I was like, even though we were newly dating, but it was still one of our first arguments. And I looked at it and I was like, I seen hearts, open that shit up. Let me see. Because I was just like, I'm not having it. This bitch was just going in on how he's a great person and da-da-da. And then his response back to me was, it's not like that.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like that.
Throw
like,
him to the dogs.
No, literally.
Throw him to the dogs.
And at the time, I'm not going to say I didn't have self-worth or anything, but I wanted to see the good in people. But now I don't do that. I see people for how they are and what they show me. But at the time, I was more optimistic. And I love to give people chances. Clearly, he had too many. Yeah, and so I was just like, what do you mean it's not like that? And he was like, no, she doesn't mean it like that. Like, it's not like she likes me. And then I literally started going through all their texts. And I was like, okay, but like, what is this? And then as I'm going through the text, right, she's texting him and she's saying, hey, I want to come over, but I saw that Kenzie is there, so never mind. Oh, can I come over? But if Kenzie's there, I'm not going to come. Just like multiple times, like she said that to him. And I'm just like, you literally didn't honor me. You didn't stick up for me. You didn't say anything. This makes me feel like there's some shit going on. After I saw that text, I said, stop talking to her. I'm leaving. He stopped talking to her. Yeah, so I feel like in a lot of ways, KGH has shown me how to love again. Not love again. Oh my God, that sounds like so dark. I didn't know how to love before that, but no, I did. But I feel like he opened me up to learn how to love in a different way in a relationship, because I loved differently in my past relationships and I felt like I gave so much. I gave almost everything I had to the point where it hurt. Now I'm in a place where I'm giving and I'm receiving and it's equal and it's so nice, but it's also something that's very new for me because I'm so used to being the person who's giving more than I receive.
Yeah.
Exceptions to like maybe one or two of my relationships. And so it's very healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it makes me happy. And I don't know.
I'm so happy for you. Like, that's just, where do you find that? Amazon? Sorry, that's just in me. I don't know why that was like the thing.
Girl, no, at a coffee shop.
Yes, okay. All right, and we're going to wrap up the episode. So do you have any final thoughts that you would tell your younger viewers on the things that they need to know to enter into a healthy relationship?
I'm going to tell my younger viewers, be authentically yourself. Because when you are yourself, you're going to attract what's meant for you and what is supposed to be in your life. When you aren't yourself, you're obviously not going to attract that. Accept people for how they are, but place them where they belong. Okay? That's my final word to everybody here.
Sometimes a person is in your life just for a season, and that's okay. And with that being said, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Improvement for Imbeciles podcast. Please check out my social medias at Natalie Etched and also at My Life as Etched on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Kenzie, for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You were such a doll and just such a big sister to me. Like, we have a lot of things we relate on. Anyways, Thank you guys for tuning in. Stay stupid, my friends.
Bye.
Bye.